I know. It's me again. The guy with the heavy accent and some stupid rhetoric. Well, scroll up if you don't like to hear it. But stay if you want to hear it. And what am I talking about today? Talking about the signs of Democrats keep calling out for violence. Who am I referring to this time? Well, Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago. Why am I saying that this Democrat is calling out for violence? And you're going to understand why they rightfully own the Democrat name. What did Brandon Johnson say to get my reaction? For me to go up here and make a fool out of myself? Well, what he ended up saying was right wing are asking for a rematch of the Civil War. Within those lines, but rematch to Civil War would mean that the right wing ended up losing Civil War. And this is coming from a black mayor. Not trying to bring in the race into this, but do you understand why they're called the Democrats? Because he's talking about right wing wants a rematch of Civil War. Not only is he black, but right wing ended up winning the Civil War. And what were they fighting for? What were the conservatives, the Republican, the God-fearing people fighting for during that time? Well, they were fighting to abolish slavery. Who was trying to keep slavery? The Democrats. So who's spilling this stupid rhetoric? A Democrat. A black Democrat. So does it really make sense what he's saying? I don't think so. Because if it wasn't for the conservatives, if it wasn't for the Republicans, if it wasn't for the God-fearing people to say we do not want slaves, that man would have been in chains. I would have been in chains. But by the grace of God, that did not happen. The God-fearing people, the conservatives, the Republicans, won Civil War, abolished slavery, and Democrats never ever forgot about that. What they ended up doing was modernized slavery. What do I mean by that? What do I know about that? Just what I've been reading. Just what the answers I've been looking for. So I'm going to give you what I'm looking into. I'm going to give you what I have learned. You guys have to read John Podesta, War Games, 2020. Now, I'm going to be a nice guy. For those people that don't want to read it. For those people that will say all these things on my comments. That I'm dumb, so on, parrot, so on, idiot, so on, ignorant, so on. But they won't do the job to go ahead and read it. So, my challenge for those people is go ahead and read it and tell me where I'm wrong. So what this article and what this whole thing about John Podesta, War Games 2020, was about the re-election of Donald Trump. So I believe it was 67, 69 former generals, politicians, constitutional scholars, law enforcement, they all went to participate in this war game. And each and every one of those people that were participating were critical of Donald Trump, which means that a whole gang that have the same belief, that have committed the same criminal activities, got together and said, okay, let's divide each other and play chess with each other and see how the next person is going to end up doing if they end up winning the presidential. If Donald Trump wins, this is the counterattack we're going to do. If Biden wins, this is the counterattack that the Trump administration will do. But keep in mind that these two teams are still the same gang that hate Donald Trump. But they're just trying to be more strategized. They really believed that Donald Trump was going to get the 2020 election. So they had to come up with a plan B. What will be plan B through Z? Well, in this war game, in the overall conclusion of this war game, was that it was going to come down to civil-like conditions. Now, 2020, we all know that was rigged. We all know that Donald Trump lost. So there was no need for that plan B. Fast forward to today. What is happening and who ended up winning? What are we seeing? What are we watching? We're watching all the blue states refusing anything Donald Trump has to say or is trying to enforce. That was part of the war game that they were talking about. All blue states stand in arms. Pretty much stand up to Donald Trump and do everything you can to counter what he wants to do. What are we seeing? A lot of protests, riots, vandalizing. That was actually part of the war game of 2020 of John Podesta. Am I lying? The only way to know if I'm telling the truth or if I'm lying, if you end up going ahead and reading that yourself. And why do I bring all this up? My bifocals are so thick that I might be seeing something else more than other people will see. Or I might understand more than other people will understand. Now, there's been other podcasters that have talked about this, that have brought it up. And what are we seeing now is kind of and pretty much like the war games of John Podesta 2020. So who's calling out for violence? The Democrats. And it came from a black mayor talking about rematch of a civil war. I don't know. So what this mayor of Chicago is talking about and the way he's persuading people or trying to persuade people is that they're under attack. That Donald Trump is seeking war. And it's so funny because when you look at X, where it's uncensored, you're going to see when the National Guard went to the Capitol, there was people, civilians, citizens, U.S. citizens, law-abiding citizens, thanking the National Guard, applauding the National Guard, saying that they're happy the National Guard is here because there's no violence. They're able to walk the streets. But the mainstream media will not ever want to show that because their narrative is Trump is a dictator. Their narrative is Trump is destroying the Constitution. But yet again, and I'll say it over and over, Gavin Newsom has SB 771 on his table, ready to be signed into law. What that is for Californians. Pretty much a hate speech. You can finesse it all you want. You can lie about it all you want. But it is plain and simple that the SB 771 that Gavin Newsom can veto or sign into law will limit you of freedom of speech. So the Democrats keep telling you Donald Trump is a dictator. Donald Trump is a fascist. Donald Trump is racist. But yet you had Joe Biden in the Arctic frost where he actually had Republicans under watch. Any Republican conservative organization were investigated, including Charlie Kirk's organization. But yet they're going to keep telling you Donald Trump is a dictator. They're going to tell you Donald Trump is the one that's destroying the Constitution. And the libtards and the Democrats eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And what are we seeing in the streets? From the libtards and the Democrats eating all this dumb rhetoric for lunch, breakfast, and dinner? We're seeing violence occurring in the streets. We're seeing agents being assaulted by the libtards and the Democrats that are eating all this for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Then you have the chief of Chicago, the police chief, stating not to assist DHS when they were being boxed in Chicago. So again, go ahead and read John Podesta, War Games 2020, and then you start to understand and see the correlation to that plan to what we're seeing now. But I just wanted to talk about this because, once again, there are signs that the Democrats are for violence. And the Democrats will stay dumb through and through. Because a black mayor decided to say, right wing want a rematch of Civil War. Does that make any sense to you guys? If it does or if it doesn't, leave it in the comments. Let me know.